Hi. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about going back to school and starting to learn ASL, American Sign Language. So, we're back in the year about 1995, 96, around there. And I'm working part-time. I have a son who's 5 or 6 years old, and up to this point I've been a mechanic. Like I said, I know a lot about cars. I love cars, but cars became computers. Everything was computerized. So first, let me say, in this video I'm going to share how I got the opportunity to go back to school, how I found a program for learning sign language. Still don't know why, but I'm sure I'm supposed to know a sign language. I'm going to talk about my first teachers and what I started to learn as I took different classes related to sign and deafness, and the fact that I was just there because I felt like I was supposed to be. I was drawn to it. I was called to it. And so I'm going to share that part of my story in this video. So my first marriage split up in the early 1994, 95, and I moved back to Seattle. So I was living in South Seattle with my son, and he was just a little guy, 5 years old, and I was still mechanicking. I was fixing cars, and I started working at a parts store, because that uses my knowledge, but I don't have to fix everything. So I was working at a parts store, and I was fixing cars on the side, and I was, for 15 years, I was a brake specialist. That was my favorite thing. Brakes and carburetors, two of my favorite things to fix, which, now. So what happened was I took a wheel off of a car and I saw wires going to the brake system, and I was just like, now they're computerizing the brake system. I was feeling so, as a mechanic, I want to figure out what's wrong and fix it. But new cars, you plug it in and you plug it into the car and it tells you what part to replace. And that to me was just boring. That was not what I was about. I have a math brain. I like to figure things out. I love puzzles and I love fixing cars because you can figure it out, at least the old cars. I don't fix anything on my new car, because it's a computer. I drive it. It's a computer. So I quit mechanicking, and at that time I have two brothers, one older and one younger. I'm the third of four. This is my family, just so this is sister, and then these two are brothers. And these guys were working in construction. They were remodeling old houses, like 1900s, I think the first one was 1903 or something. So old houses, and fixing them up and back to era, and it was really cool. So when I told my dad about my frustration with cars, he owned the company, the family business that my brothers worked on. And when I told him, just complaining one day about the frustrations of people assuming that I can't fix a car and blah, 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 just whining, just being a whiner. And he said, well, go work with your brothers until you figure out what's next. I'm like, okay. So I go and I work with my brothers. Now, I know nothing about construction at that time. I just went in and I told both of them, I said, I'm here to help, send me to get coffee, tell me what you want done. I knew nothing about construction, really. I'm very handy. I can fix anything, but I was there as kind of their assistant. And very, very shortly, I became what I called the dump queen, because we were demolishing the interior of this house and throwing all in the truck, and I would drive and I would dump it into the dump, and then I go back and then I'd fill it up, and then I go back and empty it and fill it up. So that was my job, so to speak. And I started learning about first how to tear apart a house and keep the good parts, and then how to rebuild it. So there I am. I'm working with my brothers every day, and I'm also keeping the books. I'm very, like I said, I have a math brain, so I'm very good with numbers, and I enjoy numbers. I know, weird, I know, but I really enjoy numbers, and they make sense. So I was the bookkeeper and a construction assistant. And then one day, my younger brother, his dog got out. And the dog escaped, and so we kind of paused the build for the day, and we all started driving and walking and searching for the dog. So on our timeline, it's been 10 years or so that I've been wanting to learn sign, and never did. So this dog escapes. I'm driving around. It's like a Tuesday afternoon, so the streets are pretty empty, and I see one guy walking along. And so I pull over and I put down my window and just verbalizing, saying, "Hi, have you seen a black dog running around?" And he looked at me, pointed at his ear, and shook his head no, which meant he couldn't hear me. And I'm like, sorry, okay. And that's just instantly feeling stupid for not knowing even one sign for dogs. I love dogs. Dogs are life. But I didn't know even one sign. And I was so mad with myself. I was like, I'm supposed to know sign. I'm supposed to. It's my calling. Need to learn. So we found the dog. He was fine. And then, back to work, building this house. And the very next day, my dad, who was, like I said, he was the money behind the three of us rebuilding this house. He let my brother let him know that if any of us, we'll call us kids, I was 35, I think at the time, 35, I think. If we wanted to go back to school, to college, that he and my stepmom would be willing to pay for college. Again, some of us had already had college. I went to college for 4 years for mechanicking, as car mechanic. And my younger brother had already been to college for 4 years. So fast forward, and Dad's offering again to pay for us to go back to school. My dad really values education. So I thought he's going to want me to study accounting. He always recognized that I was good with numbers and math, and thought way back in the day that I should start learning about computers, and I should have, maybe, I don't know, or become an accountant or something. So I thought that offer would have to be related to the family business, construction management, or, accounting, like I said. So that's what I thought. Now I knew that I wanted to take ASL classes. And so I kind of sheepishly, jokingly said, "Can I take sign language?" And he said, "Yeah, whatever you want." I was like, during the day when my son's at school, remember, I'm a single mom now, working during school hours. But all focused on the family business. So I'm like going, during the day when my son Kevin's in school? And he said, yeah. I was like, whoa, okay, I'm out of here. So I didn't know where to learn, where do you learn sign? I have no idea. And so I made a call. I think I called it used to be called the Seattle Community College system. They're now Seattle College. They dropped the word community, but used to be called Seattle Central Community College, had a program. So anyway, I made one call. I called one college, and they told me where I could take the classes. So I called that college and found the classes and enrolled in ASL 1. Yikes! So I enroll in ASL 1, and at the same time, my dad and my stepmom let me know that I could go back full time and just focus on education, and they would help me and support me, and I could keep earning from the family business. And I was just like, oh, okay, fine. So that college had a 2-year degree. I forget what it was called, interpreter training program. So it was very much focused. You had to do 2 years of learning ASL and then 2 years of studying interpreting. So you had to have that 2 years before you could even start your 2-year degree. So it took me 4 years to get a 2-year degree, but that's fine. That's what I needed. So ASL 1 through 6 was the beginning of my education. So ASL 1, I go in the door and I'm nervous. I'm like 36 years old and everybody else around me is 18, 19, 20 years old. So I'm feeling old and nervous and excited. And in comes the teacher, and she comes in the door and she's up at the front of class and she's deaf. And I'm like, how do I learn from a person who's deaf? What? Now, of course, in hindsight, I know that it's best to learn from a deaf person. They're first language users and they know their language, they know their culture, they know everything. So now I know, but that first day I was like, yikes. But in she came and she started, I don't even remember. I can't even envision that first day. She maybe had an interpreter, maybe, but I'm not sure. She was really good at, gesturing and showing, and, she made it happen. So ASL 1, deaf teacher 2, deaf teacher. ASL 3, I had a hearing teacher who was widely respected in the Seattle area. He was just a wonderful teacher, and just, it was amazing. And what I remember about ASL 3 is that they started introducing the concept of deaf children. I don't think I'd really thought about it prior to that. Not that I didn't think they existed, but it wasn't part of my experience. So when they started talking about deaf kids and the struggles and the oppression and the abuse, physical, mental abuse that they experienced growing up, it broke my heart. As you may have noticed here, I'm all about babies and children having a good life. I care deeply about children. It just makes the world a better place if kids have a good, fair upbringing. So here I'm listening to stories from deaf adults who experienced growing up and having corporal punishment. And being just, it was heartbreaking. And learning all the statistics, learning about that over 95% of deaf kids are born into a hearing family that don't know sign and never learn sign. And I can't even I don't know. And I meet people every day for the last 30 years, deaf people who say, yeah, my family doesn't sign. So I don't go to family gatherings anymore because they don't, like, wow. So there I was, feeling probably some pity, which the deaf community hates when people pity them. They don't want pity. They want you to give them access to the world. But there I was, feeling bad about deaf kids and that whole struggle, and I decided to go to a play that was put on. There used to be a program here in Seattle called the Deaf Youth Drama Program, and they had a deaf adult that would go to the schools and teach drama, and then they'd have a performance on stage, I think twice a year. I don't remember. Anyway, I went to one during ASL 3 when I was just really feeling impacted by the information about deaf kids. So I went, and I'm sitting in the audience, and it was just full of deaf people, and they're all around and they're signing and they're just all this going on. And I'm just like, wow. I'm just like watching, and the play starts, and I'm still going, deaf kids play. This was all very interesting to me. And it started, and a little boy, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, came out on stage, and he was dressed like a crocodile, right? So he comes out on stage, and he just looks up into the audience and starts going, Mom, just signing, Mom, where's Mom? He's looking. He's not saying his lines. He's not doing his acting. He's just looking for Mom. And he's just looking. And he finally sees her. He's like, oh, Mom, hi, Mom. So that was the moment that I went, they're just kids with a different language. And that was like, oh, okay. You know, the historical oppression and abuse of deaf children is true. And sadly, it still happens in some places across America and across the world. But in that moment, I went, he's just a kid. He was about the same age as my son. So I was just like, oh, they're just kids. Okay. And same with deaf adults. I was like, they're just people who use a different language. Okay. That was a real aha moment for me. So I went along. I'm taking ASL 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, I had a hearing teacher. 5, hearing. 6, deaf. So it varied. But the 4-year program also included deaf culture and deaf history and deaf drama, which I hated drama, but it really helped. And so it was a full education about deafness and the history and the laws and everything that's included. So it was a really good education. So after ASL 1 through 6, you can start ITP, which is Interpreter Training Program. So I did that, and I still was trying to figure out why. Why have I been so called to sign language? You know, I don't think I kept hearing about this interpreting thing, and I took interpreting because it was the basic full educational path was to go that way, even though I was going, I don't think that's my purpose. It doesn't feel like what I'm supposed to do, but it was the best education, so I kept going. And ASL or ITP 1 through 6, some deaf teachers, some hearing, and just kept going. And you know, I was very fortunate that the language came pretty natural to me. It wasn't easy, no, but I feel like I picked it up pretty well, and the interpreting came along pretty well. So I did well. I succeeded at school. I was good. I was a good student, and I learned. But I still didn't know why. Why am I here? I think maybe it's connected with kids, but I don't want to work with kids. So there I was. Why? Okay, so in the next video, I will start to tell you about my path going through interpreting and everything else, and how I just kept following my course, not knowing why. I don't need to know why. I just need to go. So that'll be next. Thanks for watching. Bye.